Hi everyone, this is Jarle from Handmade Card, Happy Heart. I'm happy that you're here. Today I have a wedding card to share with you. Let's see which items I used. So first up we have the Heart Finds die from Pretty Pink Posh. Then here I took out my hedgehog friends, but I won't be using that in my card eventually. Then I also have my Lawn Fawn Happy Wedding stamp set. So I die cut my backdrop, so that Heart Finds backdrop die with some pixie dust glittery cardstock. So this gives it a beautiful iridescent look. Then I took out my Distress Oxides in Tattered Rose, Abandoned Coral, and Seedless Preserves. I will be doing some ink blending for my background. As always, I am using some blender brushes and Bristol Smooth cardstock. I always use Bristol Smooth cardstock since that gives a very beautiful transition between the colors. It's a very forgiving cardstock, so if you have trouble blending oxide inks or any other inks for that matter, I really recommend you trying this Bristol Smooth cardstock paper. Okay, so I am using those three colors and then I'm always going back and forth between the colors until I am happy with how my transition is. Now this is very plain, so I always try to add some interest by using some splatters. Normally I always use some perfect pearls to add a little bit of shimmer, but today I just went with some regular clean water. Now here you see me taking these hedgehog friends, but I didn't quite like it because my image was way too big for my heart. So I eventually took out that Happy Wedding stamp set and took out those two little birds, since those will be perfect to place in the center of that heart. So one bird is the groom and then one bird is the bride. I did some very quick coloring for those images. I think I just used some warm grays for both of them. I did leave out that darkest marker for the bride because I wanted her to be more of a white birdie. Then I also took out my R00 for a little bit of blush and then a red for that flower on her head. So here I am taking some very tiny strips of foam adhesive and I am putting this around that whole frame of that die. And then I also cut out little foam squares and I place them randomly behind those vines so that it wouldn't squeeze when it gets mailed out. So this gives it a little bit of sturdiness, but it was very hard or very difficult to cut out those tiny little pieces of foam squares. Then I took some liquid glue and then I put down that border. So I just took out that negative space from the heart of that glittery cardstock and I cut that border out, and here I am placing my birds on top of it with some foam squares. So this gives it also some dimension. I did struggle with this card, if I'm being completely honest. It was definitely Murphy's Law. If anything could go wrong, it has. Okay, then I took out that little tiny die, which is also included in that Pretty Pink Posh Heart Finds die, and I cut out a bunch of hearts with them. So I used some red cardstock for that, just a little scrap piece of paper I had lying around. And then I am gluing all those little hearts all over my card. So I put 3 of them in that center cut heart, and then the rest all over the background. I am folding my card base, and then with some tape runner I am adhering my whole front panel onto my card base, as you see me doing here. Now my card still needs a sentiment, so I took out some black cardstock and I prepped it with my anti-static powder so that my embossing powder would only stick to that sentiment. I stamped my sentiment with Versamark ink, which is a very sticky ink, perfect for heat embossing, and then I sprinkled on my white embossing powder, tapped it a few times so all that strain embossing powder would go back into that jar, and off camera I heat set it with my heat tool. Now, since I'm very bad at fussy cutting and I can't cut straight, I always use a sentiment banner for cutting out my sentiments, so I did this here. And then I'm just trimming off those edges. Nothing can go wrong here at this point. Then for adhering my sentiment, I used 2 foam squares on both sides, so left and right. And then the middle of my sentiment strip, I put some liquid glue there, so it would adhere on my panel. Now I did want to add some accents to the cards, so I took out my glossy accents and then I put that on all of those hearts. So this gives it a very subtle shine. And it's those little details that really make a card stand out. So this is the finished card. I hope you like how it turned out, and I hope I give you some lovely inspiration. If you like my content, please consider subscribing to my channel, and I will see you again very soon. Thank you for watching. Bye!